You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry ChillyBoy Chilson, and this is the latest in my Pride series month of reviews. And today we are reviewing Benjamin. So, to help me review this 2018 UK production, I am joined by my friends Matt and Ashley from the Mashley at the Movies podcast. Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
Hi, thank you all so much for coming on and joining me for this review today. And fun fact, they are actually the ones who put me onto this film in the first place because I had actually not heard of it before.
That's right.
But
We have not spoken since you've watched it, so I'm very curious to hear what you thought of it.
Benjamin is a 2018 romantic drama from the UK. A rising young filmmaker who uses his relationships as material for his films is thrown into emotional turmoil by a burgeoning romance and the upcoming premiere of his second feature film. Now, I can certainly see why this might be a favorite for the queer community in the film landscape because it blends both of those two things together. I think in some respect or another, we're all some sort of struggling creatives out here in this landscape. But let's start with you two. You're the ones who put me onto this film. You watched it before I did, certainly. How did you feel about Benjamin?
I thought it was really good. One thing I liked about it was that it's an interesting LGBT film in that a lot of it isn't even really about being gay. It's about, like as you mentioned earlier, the creative process. Benjamin's this little trying to be a burgeoning filmmaker, which we can talk about how that's going for him. But it's that, and it's his partner that he meets up with is into singing, and we got a heterosexual friend who's trying to make his way in the comedy world. It's about friendships, and it's about people. And one thing I picked up on, because we rewatched it again before doing this episode with you, a lot of it is about people and friendships and how we treat each other. And yes, the main romance in this is gay, but the movie's about so much more than that. So I think it works on a lot of different levels, which is one reason why I like it.
Yeah, and I actually think the film satire, which you mentioned, it's one of the levels is his attempts at being a filmmaker and being in that world and not really fitting into that world. And so that layer of the movie, I think, is probably one of my favorite parts of the film. I like the relationship between Benjamin and Noah. What I love most about this film is actually Phoenix Broussard, who plays Noah, who is Benjamin's boyfriend. I think it's just a really authentic and sincere performance from Phoenix. And I was not familiar with his work before, and of course he's cute as a button, so that helps a lot. So that's my kind of favorite aspects of the film.
How about you, Larry? What did you think?
Yeah, so I actually did quite enjoy it as well. It's a really short film. It's under like an hour and a half. I really did enjoy it. I think I enjoyed that aspect that it's a queer film in the sense that all of the characters really, most of what we're watching happening is centered around queer people, but that's not really the subject of the film. It just is people who we follow identified there. But yeah, it's really about this like creative process, deals a lot with depression, and it goes pretty far into some of those depressive episodes, and depression being a really through line where it's taken as kind of something light to begin with. Like they're kind of joking about, oh, we write, songs and jingles about depression. It escalates further and further as we move throughout. And I really thought that was a pretty strong depiction of that through line for me personally. I enjoyed that our character was very awkward. And honestly, I don't mean to sound like offensive if this was not the case, but seemingly somewhere on the autistic spectrum. Just the way he interacted with folks, there was definitely a disconnect from him in his head to like how he presented outward with other people. That was really interesting, and actually I thought quite authentic for his character. And even when we get like quirky, awkward, it never quite feels quite as real as the main character in this film. But yeah, I ended up really enjoying it. So, how did you all feel about that central romance that we've been discussing? We see this film being made, first of all, that is based on, loosely, according to him, based on a past relationship, but certainly based on his inability to love and emotionally resonate. Spots this cute young guy up there singing as he gets invited to a party by one of his friends slash like manager, I think she was. Like, I don't she seemed like she was in kind of a managerial agent role for him. So he approaches him, completely kind of botches that initial discussion with him. But yay, veganism. I'm also a vegan. That brings people together here. And they end up identifying a little bit more closely over dinner, and it just kind of blossoms from there. So how did you two feel about that central romance?
I thought it was fine. It's interesting. It could have initially been just a brief encounter. I mean, they are very obviously physically attracted to each other, and they they have sex pretty quickly, pretty early on. Sometimes that's all a relationship ends up being, right? Is kind of more sex based and whatnot. They attempt to take it further than that. You're never sure if it's going to ultimately be successful, but I kind of appreciate the fact that they both, and they have kind of stops and starts with their time together. I think they both like each other well enough. I think they like each other more than just physically. I think they see within each other something that is worth pursuing. So I like that aspect of their relationship.
Yeah, I think the two actors have really good chemistry together. And you talked about Benjamin perhaps being on the spectrum or something. There were times in the movie where I felt kind of a level of frustration with this character because, and I know that part of the kind of the theme of one of the central themes of this movie is that he is full of self-doubt and he's struggling with kind of the guilt from past relationships. That's part of his character, and that's kind of what the basis of the film. But he was so frustrating sometimes in the way that he handled that and the way that he was trying to handle this new relationship. It was hard to warm to the character sometimes. The two characters together, Noah and Benjamin together, I think they really, and I think the movie kind of, illustrates this. They kind of work well together and ultimately, I think, benefit from each other. So it was an interesting relationship.
I identified pretty well with Benjamin. I liked him quite a bit. I actually liked his quirkiness. I found that kind of endearing. The only time, though, I will say it really frustrated me, and I think I thought about this when you were talking earlier, Larry, about him potentially being, on having maybe some level of autism or being on a spectrum, is the scene with his ex.
Yes.
When they're out to dinner. That scene was so frustrating.
Yes.
But it was quite obvious that the character of Benjamin, at least for part of that, found nothing wrong with interrupting a dinner out with his current boyfriend and his current boyfriend's parents, and just like talking just way too long to his ex who happened to walk by.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those scenes where I was like, it's a bit much overall. So Noah was very patient in a lot of circumstances, because I don't know if I would have been as calm afterward and that little conversation afterward if they did that to me. I don't know. That was one of those scenes that definitely did stick out to me because I think it was important. I really think the conversation between him and his ex specifically was a really good insight to Benjamin as a character, and obviously his relationships and how he works. But I wonder if maybe it just could have been done somewhere else in the theme of the story. With the way that their dynamic was, really anything could have broken them up and got them back together. Like, Yes, it didn't need to be this event with the parents and everything. I mean, it could literally be anything. Benjamin could have just broken them up at the snap of a finger, like at any time. You're almost on pins and needles watching, like, oh, is Benjamin just gonna be like, nah, no? But yeah, I like their chemistry together a lot too. I also think the ending was quite adorable. It has a nice turn, and I think this film does a lot of that turning because I also was like you, Matt. I thought this is probably going to be is this another weekend,
Yeah.
if you will? Is this another? Because we have several of those kind of LGBTQ films in which, whether by their choice or whether by force, like Call Me by Your Name or Portrait of a Lady on Fire, a lot of these films where it's almost a doomed relationship. We go in feeling like we know it can't last. And even Weekend, we know it's called Weekend. We know that there's an infinite timeline on this thing. And so I think it's kind of a common thing, it seems, in LGBTQ dramas where they don't end up together at the end. And it is just here in this moment, here in this part of your life. So I kind of saw this happening after that first night. I was like, oh, okay, it's gonna be another film like that. And it kind of sidesteps that quite a bit actually. And I liked it. I like that we didn't necessarily go down that route personally.
No, I agree with you. So back in the 90s when I first came out and kind of started making gay friends and watching the gay movies of the day, that was in an era where all the LGBT films seemed to like revolve around AIDS, like HIV. And I understood, I mean, in the context of the time that there was a reason for that, but it was also super depressing. I was looking for some kind of hope, right? And then we kind of morphed into like an era where you saw more gay people in movies, more gay characters, but they were like kind of the funny sidekick kind of thing. And then we sort of have been in an era for a while of there's these really good LGBT movies, but they're always, as you mentioned, about like their doomed relationships, right?
Perfect
And
Mountain.
yeah, and that's been kind of depressing, but we are seeing some crack through. This one is an example of that. It's even kind of even moving into like I mentioned earlier, a territory where it's not just about the character sexuality. It's about it's about that, but it's about their personality as a whole, who they are as a whole. Or you have something like the Love Simon movie. Spoiler, but you know he gets the guy in the end, right? I mean, it turns out really well. So I'm glad that we're kind of hopefully we see more of these kind of movies where it's a little bit more positive, you know, more a little bit more hopeful. So yeah, it's a good example of that.
Certainly in this modern era, I really feel like it's been since like maybe even like Boys Don't Cry really just ushered in queer cinema being predominantly sad. Just sad for a long time. Every now and then we get some kind of funniness, but sad. But then we of course have that again. We do, like I said, we talk a lot about depression, and that really is funneled through this character of Steven, his best friend, played by Joel Fry, who I'm also noticing is in a lot of queer material right now. So if you're not watching Our Flag Means Death on HBO Max at the time of recording, it just got renewed for a second season, so I'm very happy. And his character hasn't really had like any inclination of sexuality at all. He's there. But the show itself is very queer, all the way around queer. So he's there, he's here. Some could say, I mean, he's a little bit queer coded, maybe even in Cruella, but that's another like high queer fan based film with Emma Stone. And yeah, he almost married Daenerys. But let's just be clear. The gays love Daenerys. So he was next to the gays queen, Daenerys, in Game of Thrones. So I've seen him pop up more and more, but I found it interesting that he seems to be popping up in these projects quite a bit. How do you feel about Steven's character and, in essence, his own fling subplot in this film?
I loved his character. His character is kind of part of the heart and soul of this movie. You know, I mean, he's the Benjamin's like best friend. He's a supportive ally, and they're both there for each other. I mean, so Benjamin, we mentioned earlier, he's as you said, a creative. He's a filmmaker. He makes a movie, and there's this premiere of it, right? And it's you just have to watch it. It's interesting. But afterward, Stephen is there, and he's just being his supportive self, right? He's a friend, and he's not necessarily lying to Benjamin about how good or not good it is, but he's just trying to be supportive. And then later on in the film, it's Benjamin's turn to be supportive for Stephen. And Stephen has got a lot of baggage. He's got a lot of trauma that he's been dealing with. He's got a lot of depression that's manifesting. He has, there's a scene where he tries to do stand-up, and that does not go well, and that's difficult to watch. I liked, though, how supportive Benjamin and Noah are to him afterwards. It's another scene later on where Benjamin's really worried about Stephen, and I liked how that scene. I liked the acting in that scene, how that unfolded, and yeah. So I think Stephen's great.
Yeah, it's another example in this movie of positive relationships having an effect on people. I liked that friendship. You're right. I will never forget that stand-up routine. It's one of the most uncomfortable scenes that I have seen in a long time. And it just reminds me why I don't like to go to comedy clubs, because I'm always afraid something like that is going to happen. But yeah, it's nice to have a movie where there's friendships. People have the baggage, people have issues, but they have the friendships too that are helping them through, or the relationships that are helping them to change and grow. And so it's just nice to see that in this movie.
What did you think of Stephen?
Yeah, I really liked him, being as somebody who struggles with a lot of mental health issues myself. I found the character to be a really nice, if that's a good way to put it, a really nice depiction of someone struggling with that, because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, could see a lot of their own selves in that depiction of somebody who shows up for your friends, who tries to put on that face, and is trying to be out there and be socially, but sometimes, I don't know, it just comes out and it leaps out of your mouth, and you're just like, oh gosh, I can't do it. And here we are in this situation. But seeing the friends not give up on him, for one, is great. And I really enjoyed seeing Benjamin, like when he was in his darkest, was seeing Benjamin in his own quirky, off the ball kind of way, there to comfort and be there for Stephen. It was one of my favorite scenes, actually, of the movie, was them on that couch, just kind of like trying to work through what he was going through. And partially because it showed a different side to Benjamin, who more or less had been depicted as almost selfish in a lot of ways, and pretty self-centered in what he was doing through most of this film, specifically in relation to Noah and their relationship. It seemed a little bit more like one-sided towards him and how he was feeling and his behavior. So to get to see that other side of him, I think, was important. Now, that little sub relationship, I could have maybe done without him with that little manager Asian woman. I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if we needed this to set him off, but if this to send him into the spiral of despair, this little girl run around here. I did love her voice.
It was an interesting inclusion. When Stephen sleeps with, I can't remember her character's name, but Jessica Raine is the actress who I remember from Call the Midwife. She's one of the original Call the Midwife stars. But yeah, she kind of like pulls a dude on him and like just sleeps with him, and then like just kicks him to the curb.
Like, oh yeah, actually, I'm kind of seeing someone. So this is it. Bye.
Well, real quick too about Stephen. One thing I appreciate about Joel Fry's performance, and also I guess the writing by Simon Amstel, who I guess, I don't know if we've mentioned him, but he wrote and directed this movie. But one thing I like about the way the character is written and acted is there's never like a scene where Stephen gives this monologue about his depression,
Yeah.
right? He's not, there's never like some scene where he's like sitting in a bar with a drink in front of him and the camera like pans in slowly as he talks about his life and all this thing. There's never anything that obvious, but yet you get it. You know exactly what he's going through and what he's trying to deal with and who he is. And I just think that's really, really well done.
Yeah, I mean, I was panicking right there with Benjamin near the end of the film. I won't go into what's happening, but I was panicking too. And like you said, they don't feel the need to like spoon feed that to us as an audience. And instead, it just is. And you understand where he is mentally, specifically. Going up onto that stage, you definitely understand where this man is mentally. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah. I have to ask you, though, what you thought of the character Harry, played by Jack Rowland. I'm very curious to get your thoughts on
that. I kind of loved the character because he was funny and weird, but he kind of represents this, really nonchalant aspect of sexuality that I always like to see depicted. Somebody's just like, no, we're not gonna make a thing of it. Like I know what I want right now, and that's what we're doing. And then I'm gonna go back to my girlfriend, and I still want her too. And he's just like this free artiste spirit overall. that I thought was fun. How'd you feel about him?
I agree. And I think the thing I like about him is I've known guys like him, but I rarely see them depicted in movies. Movies, particularly, well, I guess it's usually LGBT movies, are usually concerned with discovering someone's sexuality, right? Like, and so if somebody is in a movie and they're having sex with a man and then a woman, the movie wants to assign a label to them or make it seem like, oh, well, maybe they are actually gay or lesbian or whatever. And I like how there's people out in this world who like and you described it perfectly, like who are just like pretty carefree with, who they may lay down with, and they are, and sometimes like in Harry's case, it's like this is an experiment, just trying things out.
I think it's just like I'm feeling it in the moment. I feel the connection right now in this creative space and these drawings. I feel like we all also know creative people very similar to that. Oh no, I gotta draw it. Like I don't know, just very no. We don't need to write it. We can think it. Okay, it's me. I'm in a coat. Like just okay. We need a little structure, but. Yeah, I think that's what's fun about this film is, like I said, so many of us in this, even if we're not like, oh, I wanted to be an actor, but I didn't make it, so I'm here talking about it. No, even if you're just wanting to talk film, most of us have like that desire for creative expression of some way. I mean, if you're an artsy person, you're kind of just an artsy person. It's how your brain operates, maybe predominantly, maybe not, but so many of us, I think, can relate to these folks in one way or another. Certainly you're watching a YouTube channel. We both have podcasts. All three of us have podcasts on here. So we have this creative baby of sorts that we work on. And I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to get up there and hitting those ages of, yeah, okay. I certainly complain about on Twitter, so, that's there too. But yeah, whether it's musicianship and you're still young, but can't seem to get any breaks, or you feel like you're just kind of stuck where you are, or you're a director and you put your heart and soul into a feature and you think it's great, but those insecurities run deep, and then you hear a critic come along and say it's like pretentious garbage.
Exactly.
It's all, or you're an actor who goes to the mainstream and discover they have nothing to say, and you want to make a film where you are in a coach dreaming about swans. It's all just part of the creative mind, I guess. And they really cover a great gambit of that. And I think that's part of what's so fun. It's relatable for a lot of different people. And I think a lot of different people will be able to identify with these characters in ways outside of sexuality. So did you all have any final thoughts on Benjamin?
For the most part, no. I will also just say that I think it's a well-made film from a technical point of view. I mean, I think the direction's good, the cinematography. I mean, it's a good-looking film. I think. I'm sure it's probably got to be fairly low budget-ish. No, I think it's a smooth-looking picture.
Yes, I agree. Very well made picture. I don't know. We haven't talked about my favorite scene.
Oh.
The bathtub scene.
Oh.
Like when that scene starts, Matt and I like started laughing because
oh yeah, it was Noah and Benjamin.
And Benjamin are in the bath together.
That's cute. It's cute scene.
It's cute. And well, what I love about it is because it perfectly illustrates the effect that Noah has on him, because they're sitting in that bath together. He's like Benjamin's being his neurotic self. And Noah just says there's no talking in the bathtub. And then they just look at each other and there's like this look of love that's, palpable. And you as the audience, you're calmed down, Benjamin is calmed down. It's just this moment of peace. And I love that scene so much.
Yeah, I do. I actually do think it's one of the most impactful, like scene to the movie, because you're just like, oh, you're getting through to him a deeper connection in this upcoming romance. Well, thank you both again so much for coming on to discuss Benjamin. If you would like to check this film out, I watched it for free over on a site called Tubi. Now, they did have a couple little ad breaks. I don't know if that goes away with any sort of subscription. I didn't subscribe. So I watched it for free with a couple of ad breaks. It's also available to rent, get video on demand. You can definitely check it out. And as you heard from the three of us, I would say we all recommend giving it a shot if you're looking for something to watch during this year or next year's or the year after that's Pride Month. Also, make sure to click that subscribe button down below so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos, including each and every one of these Pride series reviews. Matt and Ashley, once again, I really appreciate you coming to discuss the film with me. Where can people find and follow you?
You can find us online at mashleymovies.com, also on Twitter and Facebook at Mashley Movies. And we're available to listen to on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and all these other platforms.
Perfect. So make sure that you go ahead, follow, and show their podcast some love. I actually was just on their podcast not too long ago discussing a different LGBTQ film. So give it all a listen. It's great stuff. And of course, let me know what you thought of Benjamin if you have seen it, either in the comment section down below, or you can hit us all up on Twitter. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.